Through story, we've been exploring the mysteries that are hidden in plain sight until we no longer need to see by the light of existence. And remembering that it's been suggested that every character in every story represents an aspect of our self. There are several stories. The first is the story of a great rabbi who traveled from village to village, giving learned discourses and answering the questions posed by the people. He was always accompanied by his friend and wagon driver, Myrtle. Now, Myrtle was a cheerful man, but one day the rabbi noticed that Myrtle was very unhappy. So he asked him, "What is it that's troubling you?" And Myrtle replied, "I'm a nobody. And just once I'd like to be like you. People listen to you, they respect you, they laud you, and I am nothing." So the rabbi said, "Do you think you could give a lecture?" Myrtle said, "I have heard your lectures hundreds of times. Yes, I could lecture." "Could you answer questions?" said the rabbi. And Myrtle said, "I've heard you answer the questions time and again. Yes, I could answer the questions." So the rabbi said, "Well, today, Myrtle, you will be the rabbi and I will be the wagon driver." So they exchanged hats and cloaks. And when they came to the village and Myrtle stood up on the dais in front of the audience and the rabbi stood right back at the back of the crowd, at first Myrtle was very, very nervous. But when he launched into the lecture and he could see that the people were waiting for every word, he felt more and more comfortable. And even when the people started to ask questions, he was able to answer them without any hesitation at all, until someone posed a question to which he did not know the answer. So Myrtle, as did the rabbi at the back of the room, began to sweat. But then Myrtle stood up and said, "It's not that I can't answer the question, but it's just that the question is so easy, even my wagon driver could answer it." And so the rabbi at the back of the room was able to give a very learned answer to what the question that was posed was. So, to pose a question after this story, we can ask, how would you end this story? But then there's the second story, and it's that old story about the king who was so weighed down by the affairs of his kingdom that he was always in a state of anxiety and stress, as we can well relate to. The only way that the king could receive any kind of rest from his worries and woes was to go hunting. So one day he was out hunting with his entourage, but he chased a deer, and of course his great stallion was much faster than all those who followed him. So it wasn't long before he finished up deep, deep into the forest, and his entourage were well lost behind him. So the deer went out of sight, but the day was ending, and the king was completely lost, tired and thirsty. But then he saw a light in the distance, and with the last strength of his great horse, he made his way to that light on a small hill, a little farmhouse located there. So knocking on the door was answered by an old farmer with his old wife standing behind him. And immediately they could see the fatigue, the stress in the king as he stood there, looking very bedraggled. And they invited him in and embraced him totally in their hospitality, inviting him by the fire, taking off his boots and cloak, and offering him a warm bowl of curd and so forth to warm his heart. Now the evening progressed, and the old couple said, "It is the eve of our day of rest, and on this eve we always celebrate." And with that, the old farmer lit the candles that were on the table and poured the wine in the goblets that were there. And as they sat around the table, the old farmer and his wife began to hum and sing. And at first the king was thinking, what odd things to do, what strange people these are. But then he found himself, as they did, not only singing the old ballads and folk songs that everyone knew, even kings, and he joined in and began to sing and hum along with them, even as they launched into the stories of the past. He too was drawn in to the reminiscences that they had. And then the old woman got up and served from a large pot some chicken soup, and each of them partook of a bowl. After which the king said, "This is the most delicious chicken soup I have ever eaten." And he asked for the recipe. The old man and the old woman carefully related all the ingredients that went into the chicken soup, and he noted them down carefully. The next morning, when the king was refreshed, also his great stallion, he took his leave of the old farmer and his wife and returned to his palace. And there he gave the recipe for the chicken soup to his cook and asked him to prepare it for him. But after it was made, it did not have the taste of that he had partaken of with the old people. So he had his cook cook it again and again. But no time was it like that he had partaken. So he thought to himself that the old couple had a secret ingredient that they had omitted to tell him. So they decided to go back to visit them and ask. And so he did. Again they opened the door and welcomed him. And he asked them, "Please tell me, I have not been able to have my cooks make the chicken soup as was noted. Tell me, what is the secret ingredient in your chicken soup?" The old farmer and his wife looked at one another and then said to the king, "The secret ingredient is..." So these stories leave us with the two questions. How would you complete, how would you end the story of the rabbi and his wagon driver? And what for you is the secret ingredient of the second story? Mysteries that are hidden in plain sight from us until we no longer need to see by the light of our sensory awareness. How would you end the first story? And what is the secret ingredient we have that we must claim